Here we're talking about basically omens, shooting stars, omens, and prophecies, right? So he says, Ali ibn Nafi' al-Jurashi told me that Jamb, a tribe from the Yemen, had a soothsayer in the time of ignorance, capital T, I think, right? And I. And when the news of the apostle of God was blazed around, abroad among the Arabs, they said to him, "Look into the matter of this man for us." And they gathered at the bottom of the mountain where he lived. He came down to them when the sun rose and stood leaning on his bow. He raised his head towards heaven for a long time and began to leap about and say, "O men, God has honored and chosen Muhammad, purified his heart and bowels. His stay among you, O men, will be short." Then he turned and climbed up the mountain whence he had come. A person beyond suspicion told me. So here he's mentioning somebody who's reliable, but not mentioning his name. Where's the problem there? Why is that? Why could that be problematic?
Because what if he is a liar? Then how are we supposed to know?
Yeah, but
How are we supposed to check his status?
he says that he's beyond suspicion.
Oh, that's the opposite. That's someone that who's reliable. Okay.
Yeah. So he says, so we will find people saying things like that. Imam Shafi will say it, Imam Malik will say it. Here, Ibn Ishaq say that. أخبرني الثقة. The reliable person told me. So where's the problem though? Okay, let's do that another way. Who has kids? Sultan Zaid, you have kids? Sultan, you there? Okay. Sister Mahwash, how old is youngest now? He's
Assalamualaikum.
he's
Yes, he's 12.
he's 12, okay? So
Yes.
you're visiting KL with your husband Fahad, okay? And you two go shopping and you leave, what was his name?
Ryan. Ryan.
Ryan. You leave Ryan with me, okay? And he's playing with me, Carl and everything, etc. Okay? And then you come back and like, oh, can we pick up Ryan? And say, oh, I left him at my neighbor's house. Would you
Sorry.
be happy about would you be happy about that?
No, I would not be happy about that.
Yeah, but I trust my neighbors.
But that is not the agreement we had with you.
So
So
is it true that so if you trust me and I trust them, does that necessarily mean that you trust them?
no, no, that actually happened with us once. We were visiting my in-laws and they left my older son at that time many years ago with one of their neighbors, and we were not very happy about that.
Exactly. So situation. Ibn Ishaq trusts him, but you might not trust him. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it
Exactly.
may be
Because their standards might be different.
my standards might be
For,
different, or there's other
for
information, right? So this happened, for example, like there's an example of that with Imam Shafi'i trusting Imam Malik trusting somebody, Abdul Karim ibn al-Makhariq. And so he met him in Mecca. Okay, he met him in Mecca and he was impressed by him and he's like, MashaAllah. And so Imam Malik is Madani and he met this scholar in Mecca and he trusted him and he narrates from him. And everyone was like, why is Imam Malik, who's so strict, narrating from this person? And they're like, well, what's wrong? It's like, he's not good. He makes mistakes. So Imam Malik trusted him. And Imam Malik could have said, somebody whom I trust said, and be like, oh, Imam Malik. Like Imam Ahmad will say, if Imam Malik narrates from him, he's reliable. Like that's enough. But actually, that's not an absolute thing. Maybe you might narrate from somebody and other people know more information about that person. They actually know he said he makes mistakes. So if you trust somebody, let's say we trust Muhammad ibn Ishaq, let's assume, that doesn't mean we trust the people that he trusts. It doesn't mean we trust the people that he trusts. So that's why we need to know who you are, because I might not trust you. Or we might have a debate. You will see this frequently. Somebody who is labeled as good, somebody who's labeled as bad. I need to know who this person is because I don't trust every single person you trust. You don't trust every single person that I trust. Right. So it's again, it's just a story, big deal. But this phrase, this is part of the hadith world, that you need to you clarify these people. right? Okay, go ahead, Sheikh Yaqub.
Why wouldn't he just mention him? Isn't it kind of is it ever suspicious that an author or doesn't mention his the thiqah, but he'll say like someone thiqah?
Okay,
Like,
how
why
about
don't you
this?
just say his name then?
You know Sheikh Muhammad Yaqubi, Yaqub?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Do you know where he lives?
England, no?
I don't know. He might be. He's in England or Morocco or something like that, right? Where's he from?
Is he Syrian or
He's Syrian, correct. And he was pro-revolution. He had to leave very, very early on in the revolution, okay, in 13, in like maybe 2012, 2013. So imagine it's 2014 and you're in Syria, all right, in the Masjid al-Umawi, and you're saying, I asked my sheikh, and then the person's looking at you, the secret police is looking at you, and he wants to know if you're the student of him or not. And you say, the sheikh who I trust. So political could be political reasons, right? You might not want to mention someone's name. There was an issue. There's a problem, right? Maybe you trust him, other people don't trust him. So you're like, no, somebody I trust. So you want the information to be shared, and you know that if you say it, people won't trust it, right? But again, this problem is I, as an independent person, I need to know who that person is because maybe I won't trust him. That's the problem. So there's many reasons why you might do that. There's many reasons why you might do that. Obviously, it could be a bad reason. He's a weak narrator, and I want to share the information, even though it's not reliable, and I want you to think that it's reliable. So you could narrate in certain ways. And obviously, that'd be seriously problematic, you know. Like, oh, it says this in the Bible. What did you mean by the Bible? You meant al-biblios, meaning like a biblos, whatever the book. I'm like, bro, when you say the Bible, we all understand the Bible, right? We don't understand the book, meaning the book on your shelf, you know? So there's things like that where people are vague and it's actually for sinister reasons or it's not healthy reasons, right? But whatever their intention is, for us, we need clarity. The whole picture of hadith is like, what are your sources? Who are these people? Tell me every single thing possible and impossible. Right. Okay. Okay. So anyway, so he said, somebody beyond suspicion told me on the authority of Abdullah ibn Ka'b, a freed man of Uthman ibn Affan, that he was told that Umar ibn Khattab was sitting with the people in the Apostles' Mosque. An Arab came to visit him. When Umar saw him, he said, this fellow is still a polytheist. He has not given up his old religion yet. Or he said, um, he was a soothsayer in the time of ignorance. The man greeted him and sat down, and Umar asked him if he was a Muslim. He said that he was. He said, but 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 were you a soothsayer in the time of ignorance? The man replied, Good God, Commander Faithful, you have thought ill of me and have greeted me in a way that I never heard you speak to anyone of your subjects since you came into power. Umar said, I ask God's pardon. Uh, in the time of ignorance, we did worse than this. We worshipped idols and images until God honored us with his apostle and with Islam. The man replied, Yes, by God, I was a soothsayer. Umar said, Then tell me what, and then here adding from Tabari, your familiar spirit communicated to you. He said, He came to me a month or so before Islam and said, have you considered the jinn and their confusion, their religion a despair and a delusion, clinging to their camels' saddlecloths in profusion? So anyway, basically there was some kind of strange message before the Prophet ﷺ announced his prophethood. Abdullah ibn Ka'b said, thereupon Umar said, I was standing by an idol with a number of the Quraysh in the time of ignorance when an Arab sacrificed a calf. We were standing by expecting to get a part of it. Sorry about that. Okay, so anyway, he said we were standing, but expecting to get a part of it, when I heard a voice more penetrating than I had ever heard coming out of the belly of the calf. This was a month or so before Islam, saying, "O blood red one, the deed is done. A man will cry, beside God none." A man will cry, saying, "There's none beside God." Such it was, I had been told about soothsayers among the Arabs. So there's lots of really fishy things. That's the point. Odd things that are happening again and again. The Jewish warning about the apostle of God. And this is the most important one because, again, it shaped Islam, right? Why did Islam succeed? Because on a political level, because the Prophet ﷺ got political support from the people of Yathrib. Why did the people of Yathrib give political support to the Prophet ﷺ? Because they believed him to be a prophet. Why did they believe him to be a prophet? Because the Jews had prepped them for that. The Jews had been telling them in Medina that one day we will have power over all of Arabia because a final prophet is coming, and whoever follows him will have control over whole of Arabia, right? So this is very important and very kind of, obvious and simple, right? That the Jews were there telling everybody the last prophet is coming. And then when the last prophet came, they rejected him, right? Asim ibn Umar ibn Qatada told me that some of his tribesmen said, what induced us to accept Islam, apart from God's mercy and guidance, was what we used to hear the Jews say. We were polytheists, worshipping idols, while they were people of the scriptures with knowledge which we did not possess. There was continual enmity between us. And when we got the better of them and excited their hate, they said, or would say, the time of a prophet who is to be sent has now come. We will kill you with his aid, as Aad and Iram perished. We often used to hear them say this. When God sent his apostle, we accepted him when he called us to God, and we realized what that their threat meant and joined him before them. We believed in him, but they denied him. Concerning us and them, God revealed the verse in the chapter of Baqarah, the cow, and when a book, وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ كِتَابٌ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ, right? And when a book from God came to them, confirming what they already had, and they were formally asking for victory over the unbelievers, the Jews, when what they knew came to them, they disbelieved it. The curse of God is on the unbelievers. Salih ibn Ibrahim ibn Abdurrahman ibn Auf narrates from Mahmud ibn Labid, from the brother of Abdul Ashhal, from Salama ibn Salama ibn Waqsh, and he mentions here Salama was present at Badr, said, we had a Jewish neighbor from among Bani Abdul Ashhal who came out to us one day from his house, and at that time I was the youngest person in my house, wearing a small robe and lying in the courtyard. He spoke of the resurrection, the reckoning, the scales, paradise and hell. When he spoke of these things to the polytheists, who thought that there could be no rising after death, they said to him, good gracious man, do you think such things could be, that men can be raised from the dead to a place where there is a garden and a fire, in which they will be recompensed for their deeds? Yes, he said. And by him whom men swear by, he would wish that he might be in the largest oven in his house rather than in that fire, and that they would heat it and thrust him in it and plaster it over if he could get out from that fire on the following day. When they asked for a sign that this would be, he said, pointing with his hand to Mecca and to the Yemen, a prophet will be sent from the direction of this land. When they asked when he would appear, he looked at me, the youngest, and said, this boy, if he lives his natural term, will see him. It's interesting. I mean, again, these are just hearsay, right? I remember an old man like that in Jordan as well. This old man walking past some little kids, and he said, it's in this generation or the next, meaning the Mahdi. He said it's in this generation or the next, right? That doesn't prove, that's not revelation, right? But Allahu Alam, some people maybe give it insight, Allahu Alam. We believed in him, but he denied. We believed in him, but he denied him in wickedness and envy. When we asked, "Aren't you the man who said these things?" he said, "Certainly, but this is not the man." Asim ibn Umar ibn Qatada on the authority of a sheikh, meaning sheikh here meaning just an old man, not meaning a scholar, of Bani Qurayza, of the Jews, said to me, "Do you know how Tha'laba ibn Sa'ya and this is not Asid, I believe. There is an Asid, right? There's Asid and Usaid. I'm pretty sure it's Usaid. I'm not sure anyway. So this is a Vixen, son of Sa'ya, and this is Mr. Lionly, son of Sa'ya, and this is Lion, son of Ubaid. Right. So notice how they have all these. There's a lot of there's a number of things that you see in the Jahiliyyah that makes you think of like Red Indians. I don't know if that word is politically correct to say anymore, right? Plains Indians. He's called Little Fox. He's called Running Bear. He's called, So Tha'laba means vixen. That's his name. Asid is from the word Asad. But I think it's Usaid. Allahu Akbar. So how did the brothers of Bani Qurayza, how did they become Muslim? They were with them during the days of ignorance. Then they became their masters in Islam. When I said that I did not know, he told me that a Jew from Syria, Ibn Huyyaban, came to us some years before Islam and dwelt among us. I have never seen a better man than he who was not a Muslim. When we were living in the time of drought, we asked him to come with us and pray for rain. He declined to do so unless we paid him something. And when we asked how much he wanted, he said, "A bushel of dates or 2 bushels of barley." When we had duly paid up, we went outside our harra, our area, and prayed for rain for us. By God, hardly had he left his place when clouds passed over us and it rained. Not once nor twice did he do this. Later, when we knew that he was about to die, he said, "O Jews, what do you think made me leave a land of bread and wine, i.e. the Levant, to come to a land of hardship and hunger?" When we said that we could not think why, he said he had come to this country expecting to see the emergence of a prophet whose time was at hand. This was the town where he would migrate, and he was hoping that he would be sent so that he could follow him. His time has come, he said, and don't let anyone get to him before you, O Jews, for he will be sent to shed blood and take captive the women and children of those who oppose him. Let not that keep you back from him. When the apostle of God was sent and besieged Bani Qurayza, those young men who were growing youth said, "This is the prophet of whom Ibn Hayyaban testified to." They said that he was not, but the others asserted that he had been accurately described. So they went and became Muslims and saved their lives, their property, and their family. Such is what I have been told about the Jewish reports. Okay. How Salman became a Muslim. Asim ibn Umar ibn Qatada al-Ansari told me the authority of Mahmud ibn Labid from Abdullah ibn Abbas as follows. Salman said, while I listened to his words. So Ibn Abbas again is very young, right? He's much, much younger than Salman al-Farisi, right? So, he's hearing this. So, Ibn Abbas was 13 when the Prophet passed away, right? So maybe he's hearing this in his mid-20s, in his 30s, right? So you have to understand Ibn Abbas is, yes, he's a Sahabi, but he's a very, very young Sahabi. So he's not really super involved. He's more part of the next generation. He's the ambassador of between Sayyidina Ali and the Khawarij. He is the teacher of all these people, right? He's an important teacher. But, he's not like Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, these kind of people. Or even Abdullah Mas'ud, right? So Abdullah Mas'ud is way before these people, right? And this is, this is one of the special and unique things, of the Hanafi school. The Hanafi school stems from Abdullah Mas'ud. The other schools, and he is much older. He's a kind of an earlier generation. His students, like the students of Abdullah Mas'ud, are like the same time of like Ibn Abbas and these people. Right? So it's a slightly different world. Anyway, so it says, so Salman said, while I listened to his words, Ibn Abbas, he only narrates about 25 hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ. Every other hadith he narrates from the Prophet ﷺ is secondhand. Like the other thousands of hadiths that he narrates, it's basically he's a very smart kid, Mubarak, from, the Prophet ﷺ hugged him, made dua for him, he saw certain things, he was part of certain things, and, and then so, he kind of like, as a teenager, he was there among all the Sahaba. As a young man, he's picking up all their wisdom and all their knowledge. He has a lot to say, right? So that's Ibn Abbas. Like, but he's to some extent he's much like a tabi'i, like a very active tabi'i, like Sa'id and Musayyib or something like that. But maybe more than that. Told me on the authority of Mahmud al-Labid from Abdullah ibn Abbas and some etc. said, I am a Persian from Isfahan, right? From a village called Jay. My father was a principal landowner in his village, and I was dearer to him than the whole world. His love for me went to such length that he shut me in his house as though I were a slave girl. I was a zealous Magian that became keeper of the sacred fire, replenishing it and not letting it go out for a moment. Now my father owned a large farm, and one day when he could not attend to his farm, he told me to go to it and learn about it, and giving me certain instructions. Do not let yourself be detained, he said, because you are more important to me than my farm, and worrying about you will prevent me from going about my business. So I started out for the farm, and when I passed by a Christian church, I heard the voices of men praying. I knew nothing about them because my father kept me shut up in his house. So, word to the wise: don't do that with your children, right? I need to protect my kids' faith, so then keep them sheltered. There's two types of education: useful education and harmful education. So my child, in order for my child to know about the world, I have to give him an iPhone at 5, and he should watch lots of films about drugs and prostitution and murder, and he should see lots of really horrible things about people blowing people up. That's not true. At the same time, so we have to guide our children and make sure they're not exposed to harmful things, but they have to know about the world, right? They have to be confident, like, oh, have you ever heard about Christianity? Yeah. Pros and cons of Christianity. Look, it's like this and like this, like this. Not that it's something new, right? Like, imagine, for example, your son is 15 and the first time he's ever exposed to a non-Muslim and is a really, really nice Christian, and you've been telling him his whole life, Christians are horrible, Jews are horrible. It's like, no, but now, like, you're lying. That's not true. There are many nice Jews and Christians and many nice atheists. So how do I process that? So keeping kids in a bubble is not a good thing to do at all. We need to process things with them, right? Process things. Let's look at this. What did we learn? You have a teacher that's non-Muslim. What did we learn? What was it like? What questions come to mind, right? Encourage questions. Say, yeah, is Islam true? How do you know? Right? Oh, non-Muslims don't go to paradise. That's problematic. So it's better to deal with that at 12 than to deal with that at 42. When you're like, yeah, I'm just doubting everything now. I don't get it. Like my Muslim relatives are all horrible. My non-Muslim colleagues are all nice. I'm having serious Aqidah issues. Like, how could it be that, these people go to hell forever? Like, I don't get it. So you need to process that at 12, 13, 14, 15. Keep asking questions, right? So that you can actually process things as opposed to keep them in a bubble. It's not useful. It doesn't help. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ إِن كَانَ لِلَّهِ وَلَدٌ فَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْعَابِدِينَ. Say, with all boldness, right? بِمَلْءِ الْفَمْ, as they say in Arabic, with a full mouth. Say, if God has a son, sign me up. I'll be the first person to worship him. Right? So we are people loyal to the truth, loyal to logic, right? We are happy to discuss because we're on the objective truth. We don't feel insecure. Right? There was one lady, she was telling me about her son. He was doing this course called the Theory of Knowledge. It's a part of the IB, International Baccalaureate curriculum. And she basically, whenever he had questions about how we know what we know, she would always warn him, like, don't think too much. It's not good, right? And that's totally wrong. That's a totally wrong thing to do. That's what we do. We ask the question. We in madrasa, we ask the question, how do you know what you know? That's what we do. That's as of the last, the beginning chapter of key textbook for the last 700 years. And that's a key textbook basically throughout the Muslim world. How do you know what you know? So I'm not even saying one Muslim, I'm just saying, how do I even know anything? So then you start to say, how do I know anything? Build your philosophy. Like, how do you look at the world? How do you work out things? How would you know what truth and falsehood is? Right? And then you build from there, and then you look at Islam, like, yeah, this is true. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what about this? And what about this? What about this? We ask questions, right? We challenge things. Because if you don't challenge things, you actually know, Imam al-Laqani says this, وَكُلُّ مَنْ قَلَّدَ فِي التَّوْحِيدِ إِيمَانُهُ لَمْ يَخْلُ مِنْ تَرْدِيدِ. He says, everybody who just blindly follows in their creed, I'm a Muslim because my parents are Muslim. إِيمَانُهُ لَمْ يَخْلُ مِنْ تَرْدِيدِ. His iman will always be shaky. It's always be shaky. It's all over the place. Whereas if you're trying to be a spider plant, right? A spider plant plants itself, and then that branch has its own roots. If the mother plant died, the other one wouldn't, right? Your child, yes, they just listen to you, your parents, you have a lot of influence, but eventually it's like, no, I understand with my mature mind that Islam is objectively true, and even if the whole world, including my parents, left Islam, I wouldn't. That's what we want from our kids, right? So I started out, okay, I knew nothing about them because my father kept me shut up in his house. When I heard the voices, I went to see what they were doing. Their prayers pleased me. I felt drawn to their worship and thought it was better than our religion, and I decided that I would not leave until sunset. So I did not go to the farm, right? Rule number 2 then about kids. Kids don't listen to you, right? Kids will not be 100% obedient. That's not how that's, because they're not you. It's not a machine, right? It was interesting. My wife had a friend over yesterday. So we're here in Malaysia, right? Malaysia is a kind of a mix of different cultures, right? It's a real mix of all sorts of things. So one prominent subculture in Malaysia is the Chinese culture. So in Chinese culture, it's like 100% submission and no discussion. You don't need to understand. It's just authoritarian, right? So authoritarian parenting is very bad. It's necessary at short sometimes, right? Like, it's 2 a.m. Why do I need to go to sleep? You need to go to sleep. I'm not having a discussion now. But in general, everything should be like you're training your children how to understand the world, and being authoritarian is not useful and does not help, right? Pray. Why? Because daddy says you have to pray. That's not a good argument at all, right? You're trying to get them to understand, why should I do what I do? Why should I wash my teeth? Why should I eat healthy food? Why? You're trying to, this is a healthy way of parenting, right? Authoritative versus authoritarian, right? So anyway, So like, so this is doesn't work. He said like, don't delay it. Da, da, da. He's not going to listen, right? Especially a teenager. Um, he asked me where I had been and reproached me for not obeying his instructions. I told him that I had passed by some men who were praying in their church, and I was so pleased with what I saw of their religion that I stayed with them until sunset. He said, my son, there is no good in that religion. The religion of your fathers is better than that. Why? No, I said, it is better than our religion. My father was afraid that of what I would do, so he bound me in fetters and imprisoned me in his house. So should you do that with your kids? My son's going to see his girlfriend. Let's lock him up in his house. Not a very useful thing to do, is it? It's not. I mean, it's going to solve a problem for a very short time. It's not really going to help. You know. I sent to the Christians and asked them if they would tell me when a caravan of Christian merchants came from Syria. They told me, and I said to them, when they have finished their business and want to go back to their country, ask them if they will take me. They did so, and I cast off the fetters from my feet and went to them to Syria. Right. So this is subhanallah, sidq, right? Genuine seeking the truth. Like they left everything. And so this is a thing for us, right? Recently I was in Singapore and I was just telling people about, many people want to leave California because it's too expensive. So I was saying, many people, is it too like if it's too expensive to live in Singapore, then leave, right? And the board member pulled me and said, look, the Singaporeans are really scared of people leaving the country. It's like a lot of it's kind of like a police state. They're very strict. And like they're scared that they're going to tell people to leave the country. You can live in any country you want. You can live anywhere, right? There's no place where you have to live, right? Wherever you fear Allah, wherever you worship Allah, you can live there, right? But you do have to be willing to make major life sacrifices for the deen. Like if it's better for your deen to live in Guatemala, then go there, If you have to go and live in Alaska, and you get a pay cut of like 70% pay cut, then do so, right? Because that's what we have to. So this is what Salman al-Farisi is doing, right? He's made this ridiculous risk. He's never been to Syria. He's going to a place he doesn't know anything about. It's not safe. It's an extremely long and difficult journey, right? So he's going to Levant. They told me, etc. I arrived there. I asked for the most learned person in their religion, and they directed me to the bishop. I went to him and told him that I liked his religion and should like to be with him and serve him in his church, to learn from him and pray with him. He invited me to come in, and I did so. Now he was a bad man who used to command people to give alms and induce them to do so. And when they brought him money, he put it in his own coffers and did not give it to the poor until he had collected 7 jars of gold and silver. So notice this. Not only have abuse, right? This is religious abuse, right? Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is religious abuse, right? This is what we mean by here's this girl, for example, she's taken off her hijab, she's become a lesbian. Why? Because the sheikh messed her up, right? The imam of the masjid messed her up. Just like whatever. Like everyone's fake. Like, this is it is an excuse and it's not an excuse, right? We have to be sympathetic. Like I know people who have gone through religious abuse. My dad said that. Yeah, my dad was in a situation like that. He said, for years I just prayed, but bitterly. Like I felt wronged by Allah. Like I felt like Allah wronged me. And he used to make this dua, which didn't have adab, like Allah, you owe it to me to show me the truth. You owe it to me. It's not true, right? Allah doesn't owe anything to you. So basically everything was perfect and everything totally fell apart. Like I was the first of my brothers who was named by my dad. My older brothers were named by somebody else. But that whole world just fell apart totally. And it's very, very sad. And it was oh, I have nothing. You have nothing in life. So this is Salman al-Farisi. He just left the whole world and went all the way across the other side of the world, to go and live this life. And he's dealing with a sheikh. The sheikh is totally fake. So with all rights, he could just go back to Syria and say, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm an idiot. Yeah, they're all fake, But he didn't. Why? Because religious abuse is not actually an excuse. You can't say on Judgment Day, I took off my hijab because Sheikh so-and-so did something to me. You can't say that because the truth is still there. You can't on Judgment Day, you don't have an excuse. So we should be sympathetic, of course. We should be understanding and understand how to talk to people and understand that there is a systemic, almost systemic, religious abuse. But it's not an excuse on an individual level. You can't say, I'm allowed not to be religious because I was messed up by religious people. You can't say that. That's not a sound thing. That doesn't give you an excuse. You know, the Imam of the Masjid did this to me, therefore I don't have to pray. You know, these are that's not true. So, right, and so people need to know that, right? That it's like saying, like my leg hurts, so therefore I don't have to pray. Your leg hurts, so therefore you can sit down and pray. You still have to pray, you know. So I was really messed up by lots of scholars in the past, and really just just growing up in post, growing up in post. Sorry, my rabbit is running past my pigeons. Um, uh, Growing up in a post World War II really messed me up. Growing up, post Industrial Revolution messed me up. Growing up in whatever it is has really messed me up. True, but that doesn't mean you're not responsible. You're still responsible for your life. You're still responsible for your things. You're still responsible for what you can do, right? Okay, so anyway, he said, I conceived a violent hatred for the man when I saw what he was doing. Some time later, when he died and the Christians came together to bury him, I told them that he was a bad man who exhorted them and persuaded them to give alms. And when they brought money, put it in his coffers and gave uh, nothing to the poor. They asked how it could possibly I know this. So I led them to his treasure, and when I showed them to the place, they brought out 7 jars full of gold and silver. As soon as they had said that, they said, "By God, we will never bury the fellow." So they crucified him and stoned him and appointed another in his place. I have never seen any non-Muslim whom I consider more virtuous, more ascetic, more devoted to the next life, and more consistent night and day than he. I loved him as I had never loved anyone before, right? Because it's a religious love, right? So people who like very twisted minds are like, oh yeah, Jalaluddin Rumi and Shamsuddin Tabrizi, that they're like homosexuals. Like, Habibi, you're just crazy, right? So when you love somebody for the sake of Allah, that's the deepest possible love, right? So when you love a teacher, you love a student, you love a sheikh that you've never even heard of or seen, and they have no relationship. Like you love a scholar from the past, it's a totally different relationship, you know. I stayed with him a long time until he was about to die. I told him how I loved him, and I asked him to whom he would confide me and what orders he would give me now that he was about to die. He said, "My dear son, I do not know anyone else who is as I am." Right? So notice, this is the end of the deen. Right? This is what we're seeing. This is what I mean by Ahl Fatra. There's nobody who's on the haqq and nobody who's right. Men have died and others either altered or abandoned most of their true religion. Except a man in Mosul, he follows my faith, so join yourself to him. And this in reality is also the case in Islam, right? So you will find people, for example, who might be educated, technically speaking, but they're just off, right? So there's a lot of people who are off. And so you take what you can and you leave what you don't want, you know? I think I mentioned to some of you before, there was this really, really famous sheikh that I wanted to visit, and somebody told me, said, don't visit him. I was like, how? He's like world famous, like one of the most famous Muslim scholars, in the last 50 years. So I was like, why shouldn't I visit him? And he's like, don't visit him. And I was like, why? He lives like literally like 5-minute walk from my house. So then he said, if you're going to visit him, ask so and so first. I was like, okay. So anyway, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go visit the sheikh. So I visited the sheikh and it was horrible, it was a horrible experience. He was really rude and He's like talking to me, like scratching his belly, like under his belly, under his belly button, you know, kind of like a redneck style. It's like really weird. So, I don't know. I'm not Allah, I'm not his judge, but it seemed like if I studied with that person, I don't think I would, you know. So like my teachers, they always encourage me, like particularly as a young student, you have to surround your people who are alim amil. Like here's a person who learns sacred knowledge only to apply it in the fullest degree, and they hold themselves to the fullest degree, and they are genuinely like they want to change, they're very humble, etc. So there's many people who are like that. There are many people like that, but most people are not like that. The reason why I did not study Sharia, I didn't do a BA in Sharia at the University of Jordan. I did Arabic language, was for that reason. It's because you go into the lecture theater and it's not like that. It's all messed up. But like really weird, like ridiculous pride, ridiculous attitude. It's like not all of them. I'm not going to say everybody's like that, right? But it's like that's not, in order to get a PhD in Islamic studies, you do not have to be a morally good person. You do not have to have like certain character or anything. That's not a condition. So that's how things in the past it was very different. In the past, when you say sheikh, it's like, oh, it's like this and this and this. And like certain people like, it's the person's not a sheikh, right? Whereas, but now it's like, oh, he's a PhD, he's this, he's that. It's like, yeah, people are really messed up. And you would find people like that in the past here and there. Like I think it was Shu'bah, one of the great hadith scholars. He traveled to Mecca to study with a sheikh. And he said, like, there was nobody on the face of the earth who I wanted to meet more than this person. And when I met him, there was nobody I didn't want to meet more than this person. Like he said, the guy could hardly pray. Like he's not even praying properly. Like there's like very little. He saw him, this hadith, hadith narrator, saw him. What's it called? He was weighing some scales in a marketplace, and he basically cheated. Like he cheated the guy. He's like, what on earth is this? Like I've traveled all the way across the desert to come and study with this hadith scholar, and he's like, what is it? What is this thing? Like the guy doesn't even know how to pray. So you find people like that here and there, right? Generally speaking, it's not like that, but now and then, right? There are certain people like, or maybe they had temper issues. There are moral issues with people, so it happens now and then. But in general, we have to make sure that you study with people. That's why you have to have personal interaction. That's why you should not study online. My advice to everybody: get off Instagram, get off YouTube, get off Zoom, go and find good people to be with. It's very important. Zoom, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok is like, I don't know, like vitamin D pills when you can't get enough sun, like I'm like seriously, got serious problems, or I'm anemic, or I don't know what it is, right? Like you have a problem. So, but that's not how the deen works. The deen works like the Sahaba were with the Prophet. You go and travel like Salman al-Farisi. He traveled, he left everything. I want to be with people who are of the people of the Akhirah, right? And then when they don't exist, find somebody else. When they don't exist, find somebody else. Like people who like being with them, you look them in the eye and you're like, oh yeah, I get you. I get it. It's like there's no words. I don't even understand what you're saying, but I get it. Because they have this way of being. This is what we need to be with. So he follows my faith. So join yourself to him. So when he died and I was buried, I attached myself to the Bishop of Mosul. So now you're going right across the desert. Like that's not a 2-minute walk, right? You're going all the way across the deadly desert, all the way to Iraq, telling him that so and so had confided me to him when he died and told me that he followed the same path. Do you think he spoke their language? He's coming from Persia. What about political things? Do you think it was easy? A Persian turning up in Byzantine Levant? And then you were in the Levant for the last how many years, and you turn up in another country with no passport? Do you think they thought he was a spy? Yeah. So insane things, right? There's a genuine sacrifice, genuine like worldly sacrifice that Salman al-Farisi did. I attached myself to the Bishop of Mosul, telling him that so and so had confided me to him when he died, and told me that he buried the same path. He followed the same path. Excuse me. I stayed with him and found him just as he had been described, but it was not long before he died, and I asked him to do for me what the previous predecessor had done. He replied that he knew only of one man in Nasibin, which I believe is in Bahrain, who followed the same path, and he recommended me to go to him. I stayed with this good man in Nasibin for some time, and when he died, he recommended me to go to a colleague in Ammuri. I don't know where this is. I stayed with him for some time and labored until I possessed some cows and a small flock of sheep. When he was about to die, I asked him to recommend me to someone else. He told me that he knew of no one who followed this way of life, but that a prophet was to arise who would be sent with the religion of Abraham. One second, please. So being with people, very important. And there will come a time when it's like that, there's nobody left. But that's not that time hasn't come yet, by the way. Right? So when somebody tells you there's no righteous people left, a lot of people are messed up. That's true. But there are lots of righteous people. There are lots of amazing people to be with, you know? People who will change your lives. Jazakum khair. Al-Muriya, Nablus, a Palestinian village. So anyway, he's going back across the desert, right? He's going back from Iraq all the way back to Lebanon. That's really hard. To survive it is difficult, right? He told me that he knew of no one, and he would be sent to the religion of Abraham. He would come forth in Arabia and would migrate to the country between two lava belts, between which were palms. So that's in Medina, right? The two sides of the Labitay and Medina, the two sides of Medina. So Medina is basically fortified on two sides with like a volcanic rock, and then it's open on two other sides. He has unmistakable marks. He will eat what is given to him, but not things given as alms. He does not receive charity. Between his shoulders is the seal of prophecy. If you are able to go to that country, do so. Then he died and was buried, and I stayed in Ammuriya as long as God willed. Then a party of Bani Kelb, merchants passed by, and I asked them to take me to Arabia, and I would give them those cows and sheep of mine. They accepted the offer and took me with them until they reached Wadi al-Qura, when they sold me to a Jew as a slave. So they basically sold him as a slave. I saw the palm trees, and I hoped that this would be the town which my master had described to me, for I was not certain. Then a cousin of his from Bani Qurayza of Medina came and bought me and carried me away to Medina. And by God, as soon as I saw it, I recognized it from my master's description. I dwelt there, and the apostle of God was sent and lived in Mecca. But I did not hear him mentioned because I was fully occupied as a slave. Then he migrated to Medina, and as I was at the top of a palm tree belonging to my master, carrying out my work while my master sat below, suddenly a cousin of his came up and said to him, God smite the Bani Qayla. They are gathering at this moment in Quba around a man who has come to them from Mecca today, asserting that he is a prophet. When I heard this, I was seized with trembling, so that I thought I should fall on my master. So I came down from the palm and began to say to his cousin, What did you say? What did you say? My master was angered and gave me a smart blow, saying, What do you mean by this? Get back to your work. I said, Never mind. I only wanted to find out the truth of his report. Now I had a little food which I had gathered. I took it that evening to the apostle of God who was in Quba and said, I have heard that you are an honest man and that your companions are strangers in want. Here is something for alms, for I think you have more right to it than others. So I gave it to him. The apostle said to his companions, Eat. But he did not hold out his hand and did not eat. I said to myself, This is one, i.e. he doesn't eat charity. right? So again, there's a general problem with charity. Okay, that something unique to the Prophet ﷺ period. He didn't receive charity. But charity is, there's this Eastern value of like, be self-respect, don't receive charity, don't deal with charity, like, do your own thing. That's noble, right? And that is important. And so we have a problem as Muslims in the West is that we are very much beholden to the West, very much, right? You turn up in America and you're going to be, unless you're ridiculously wealthy, you're going to be on healthcare, free education, free this, free that. You're going to have, all this help. So I'm not saying don't do it because most of us are not in the situation where you have a choice, but I'm just saying it's totally off, right? I mentioned to many of you before, you get Ertugrul Ghazi, right? You bring him to the Byzantines and say, oh, we have some charity for you. He's not going to accept it, is he? He's like, I'd rather die. So, oh, we heard that your followers are starving in the winter. We have some bread for you. He said, it's okay. Feed it to the pigs. I don't want it. Right? So, that a Muslim receives charity from a non-Muslim is not an ideal situation at all. Right? And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. You're in a situation that you don't have a choice. What are you going to do? Pay for your healthcare yourself? Even if you pay for your own insurance, you're not paying for the healthcare yourself. You're paying for insurance. Like nobody is paying out of pocket in the States because it's too expensive. Right? Nobody has their own roads, their own schools, their own every single thing, right? You have to be, again, ridiculously expensive, wealthy to do that, like a multi-billionaire, that you have your own police and your own healthcare and your own this and your own that. It's not going to happen. But it's just not an ideal situation at all, right? You're in a country, you're beholden to them. You are receiving all this charity. Your country itself, like I know somebody who worked in the foreign office. He's like saying, I don't know, it's like to date, I don't know if it's still true, that like Afghanistan still receives $1 billion a year from America. So then you turn up as an Afghan, like, oh, I've come to convert America to Islam. It's like, bro, like, number one, you've come, we're helping you out. You're helping your country out. We are paying for this. You're on housing, you're on this, and you're like, da'wah. It's just not very convincing. But when you turn up like, no, I am the ambassador of the Ottoman court, and we have a gift, and we are feeding everybody, right? Money does talk, and it is an important thing, right? So again, we're not in a situation where we can keep to these standards, but at least we can know what those standards are. We shouldn't be in a situation where we're beholden to anybody, right? Particularly, a non-Muslim. The apostle said to his companions, eat, but he did not. He says, that is one. Then I left him and collected some food, and the apostle went to Medina. Then I brought it to him and said, I see that you do not eat food given as alms. Here is a present for which I freely give to you. The apostle...
Feel it. You don't just go home.
One second.
Okay.
Okay. Then I came to Apostle, he said that's two, that he accepts gifts, but he does not accept, so it's sunnah to accept gifts, right? The Apostle ate it, and I said that's two. Then I came to the Apostle when he was in Baqi al-Gharqad, where he had followed the buyer of one of his companions. Now I had two cloaks, and he was sitting with his companions. I saluted him and went around to look at his back, so that I could see whether the seal which my master had described to me was there. When the apostle saw me looking at his back, he knew that I was trying to find out the truth of what had been described to me. So he threw off his cloak, laying bare his back, and I looked at the seal and recognized it. Then I bent over him, kissing him and weeping, right? If you can imagine, right? Like this, your whole life, his whole life, he left his family, he left his whole world, and he was abused, and he was sold into slavery, and it's like, subhanallah, right? He's crying, right? Subhanallah. And told him my story as I have told you, right? O Ibn Abbas. The apostle wanted his companions to hear my story. Then servitude occupied Salman so that he could not be at Badr and Uhud with the apostle because he was still a slave. I mean, he was wrongfully enslaved, but he was a slave. Salman continued, then the Apostle said to me, write an agreement. So I wrote to my master agreeing to plant 300 palm trees for him, digging out the base, and to pay 40 oaks of gold. I don't know what measurement that is. The Apostle called on his companions to help me, which they did, one with 30 little palms, another with 20, another with 15, and another with 10, each helping as much as he could until the 300 were complete. The Apostle told me to go and dig the holes for them, saying that when I had done so, he would put them in with his own hand, subhanAllah. Helped by my companions, I dug the holes and came and told him. So we all went out together, and as we brought him the palm shoots, he planted them with his own hand, and by God, none of them died. Thus I have delivered the palm trees, but the money was still owing. Now the Apostle had been given a piece of gold as large as a hen's egg from one of the mines, and he summoned me and told me to take it and pay my debt with it. How far will this relieve me of my debt, O Messenger of Allah? I said, take it, he replied, for God will pay your debt with it. So I took it and weighed it out, and by God it weighed 40 oaks. And so I paid my debt with it, and Salman was free. I took part with the Apostle in the battle of the ditch, Khandaq, as a free man, and thereafter I was at every battle. So subhanAllah. So anyway, here's the story of Salman al-Farisi. Inshallah, we'll stop here. So key things is, sidq niyyah, patience, right? And religious abuse. Religious abuse is not unique. It's not a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's quite a normal thing, right? Being bitten and traumatized from your first marriage, sexual abuse. These are very, very bad things. I'm not saying normal as in it's fine, but they are part of the world. Now we have to realize that they're part of the world, and we have to be sympathetic to people who've gone through these things, but they don't change the deen. Like the deen still holds, you're still more responsible. It's just really, really, really hard, right? So things can be easy, things can be hard, and things can change, but you still have to do the deen, right? What is taklif? What is a taklif? Moral responsibility is ilzam ma fihi kulfa, being obligated to do something difficult. That's what it is. Oh, it's hard for me. I know. But if it wasn't hard for you, you wouldn't be asked to do it, because there'd be no point, right? So it's given my past, given what happened to me, it's very, very hard for me to do this. I know. That's why you're being asked to do it. That's the reality, right? May Allah forgive us all. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.